How's it going, everyone? Nick from Comic Culture here. It's time for Nick at Night, my weekly non-spoiler comic book review show. Got all my books read. Let's go through each and every one of them right now. I'm going to go ahead and put up my grading bar. How this works is I go over a book. I put the cover of that book on the grading scale so you see how they stack up against each other. So let's get into the big two. I actually have some DC and Marvel books to talk about this week, which is a nice thing. We have Detective Comics number 1067 from Ram V. It's a pretty interesting book. If you like Ram V's writing style, if you'd like a little bit of that like mythological element inside of your stories, this is a pretty cool little Batman run for you. We essentially, without spoiling it too much, we essentially have this family coming back into Gotham. They're there to take it back over. They have strong ties to like the Arkham Asylum and the Arkham area, a lot of history in that area in general. So they're kind of attacking the front on a couple different ways through just brute force, through political means, through sabotage, things like that. And then we have Batman trying to play catch up. You know, who are these people? What's their motivation? Why are they attacking the things they're attacking? And they're just trying to figure this all out right now. We have some of the criminal underworld witnessing all this kind of stuff happening, some in collaboration, some willingly and unwillingly in collaboration with this group coming into Gotham. So it's a pretty fun exploration of what's going on right here. Again, Gotham's kind of under siege right now. Batman has to figure this out and try to save the day. So it's a pretty cool book. If you're into the Batman stuff, if you like Ram V's writing style, how he can make things a little bit more deep or more mythological, I think you're going to like Detective Comics. Check that one out. Nice House on the Lake issue number 12 from Jamestown IV. This is the conclusion of this arc right here, the long-awaited conclusion. I think the hype for this book has definitely died down over, the last 8 months, I would say. I think everyone was on board in the beginning, the early stages of this story, but I think a couple narrative and plot choices kind of set back everyone's excitement just a little bit. But I think, at the end of the day, it was an interesting story. It was a pretty cool Thunderdome-ish experimental kind of a thing. We basically have this alien that came down, had these different relationships with all these different people, and the alien objective was to destroy the world but keep pockets of humanity alive in some kind of an artificial environment where they have all their necessities met, right? They can't actually harm themselves. They had unlimited supplies, things like that. And I think the objective was to get core samples of humanity in general in different areas around the world and kind of study their behavior and maybe use that as the basis of society going forward, something like that. But it's a very human story too. All these different characters have history with each other, history with Walter, this alien that kind of set up their entire thing here. And so it's basically the crumbling of that whole plan. The different people get access to certain information, they figure out their environment, they get wise to what's going on, and it's all just this big, gigantic manipulation story with Walter and all these different people we were introduced to. I will say that the novelty of the story and this the progression and the pace of the story wore off on me pretty early on in this run, and so it was fun to kind of see this end and see where it goes from here. There probably will be a volume 2. In fact, in the back of this issue, they talk about end of cycle 1. So whatever cycle 1 means is being referred to from the aliens here. We're probably going to get subsequent cycles. We'll see what's going on in here. I wanted to see this story go beyond this bubble, beyond this dome. We were introduced into a couple scenarios in these issues where our people inside here were outside. They were in some kind of like apocalyptic zone. Maybe that's cycle 2. I don't really know. It's kind of like their utopian world crumbled and they're living in the chaos right now. And we never got to see that in here. So maybe that's cycle 2. Who knows? Let me know what you guys thought about Nice House on the Lake. It started really interestingly and then it kind of wore me down over time. And now that it's over and I know there's another volume coming out, I'm like, do I care enough to get it? To get volume 2. What's your guys' thoughts on this? The next DC book we have this week is DC vs. Vampires issue number 12 from Tynan and Rosenberg. I got these Zerdy covers because I like the character spotlights on these, and they're pretty awesome looking. So this was supposed to be the conclusion in my mind. This is issue number 12 of this run, and we kind of got an ending, but it's still going on. And what I mean by that is we do have a confrontation at the end from our main vampire leader. I won't spoil it in case you're reading the story or just about to get into it. We have our confrontation between our good guys and our bad guys, and there is some kind of a resolution. That meeting just didn't really do it for me. It was kind of out of character on the one side, and when you get there, you'll understand, I think, what I'm talking about. We had this goal, this objective to meet this entire time, and they kind of flipped the script at the 11th hour a little bit. I just didn't like the direction it was going in. Meanwhile, we have some other pocket areas where there's different heroes trying to win the day in whatever area they're in. That area's got me a little bit more excited, and there's definitely going to be at least a continuation of the story, or maybe a spin-off. Maybe it's going to be called DC versus Vampire Dawn. That's kind of the hint that I'm getting towards the end of the book here. And so this is not done yet. The story has some more things to explore, some things to wrap up, some more bad guys to slaughter, things like that. So if you thought you're going to be done on issue number 12, we're not. We're going to keep on going with this one, which is okay because in general, I like this story, and I like stories like Deceased as well. So yeah, I was kind of excited to finish the story, to hear the conclusion, but it's going to keep going, I think. So not too bad. What you guys think? All right, moving into some Star Wars territory, we have High Republic Volume 2, issue number 3. And I was a little bit hard on issue number 1 and 2 because the characters they introduced in these series didn't really fit the classic Jedi look and feel that I was kind of used to from watching the shows and reading some of the other comics and watching the movies and things. And we were introduced to a couple of different characters who you didn't know if you can trust them really. They seemed to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, making our protagonists not trust them. But at the end of the day, their intentions are actually good. So it's like this constant battle as the reader, knowing that they're innocent, but they're always kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time, getting caught red-handed, so to speak, in different situations. We explore the backstory in issue number 3 of one of the characters we were introduced to in the previous issues, how we got to have this reputation of being someone that's untrustworthy. And again, it's like a wrong place, wrong time situation for them. And so we continue this path where the main Jedis that we know and the Padawan that we know are kind of fools. They think they understand what's going on. They're accusing the wrong people of doing things they're not really doing. And they're surrounded by people who are just ignorant to everything. So it's kind of frustrating, honestly. But we're going to keep reading it, at least for just the historical knowledge in case they bring these characters on the screen. We'll have a little bit of context of who they are, how they met, and things like that. But from a storytelling perspective, this book is kind of annoying me right now. But let me know what you guys think of High Republic issue number 3. One Star Wars book that's not been annoying me so far is Star Wars High Republic The Blade issue number 1 from Charles Soule. And the art in here is actually one of the better drawn Star Wars books with Marco Castello. And so I like this book a lot. We were introduced to a couple different characters. One's this like codependency, half sister, half brother kind of a relationship. And they're both Jedis in their own way. They both have their own unique abilities. And they're kind of going around performing like bounties, right? Collecting bounties and helping people that need help from a Jedi. So there's actually ways that they can actually accomplish these things. And so they team up and they go across different lands, and they're actually on their way to this next mission that's really remote, and they're heading in that right direction. So this book is really fun. I like the dynamic between the protagonists that we have here, these like half siblings in a way. And again, the art style is really, really good with this book. And I just like the dialogue. I like the pace. I like the interactions they have with the different villains in this book. And some of the confrontations are pretty cool too. Unique lightsaber battles and techniques used in here too. So definitely The Blade is a better one. I would say High Republic Adventures number 1 that came out a couple of weeks ago is also a really nice number 1. I would pick up this one and that High Republic Adventures number 1 if you're into some Star Wars. So far, High Republic has not been great, but The Blade is pretty cool. Check it out. All right, we're going to go into some Marvel books right now. We have Moon Knight issue number 18 from Jed MacKay. Another great issue of Moon Knight, although they do steal a pretty big scene from a very popular DC characters movie that came out a long time ago that we would love to see him reprise that role as. I won't exactly spoil what happens in that particular scene, but it's pretty reminiscent. And as soon as it started to play out, I'm like, oh, we're totally getting that scene from that movie. And so if you know what I'm talking about, put it in the comments maybe. But yeah, just be warned, there might be some spoilers down there for that. This is a big revenge thing. So we have this really big organization of vampires invading New York right now. And we have Moon Knight essentially confronting them at one of their big meetings or big conferences. And so it's a big battle issue between some of our heroes. And we have just a big confrontation between all these guys. So it's an interesting book. I like the setup from it, even though they stole a couple points from a movie. The execution was pretty fun. The art style is really fun in this book. One of the better Marvel books. It's definitely in the top 5 Marvel books out right now. So I would highly recommend Moon Knight. We are 18 issues in right now. Still exciting. The art style is still getting me. Street level heroes, street level villains. It's an appropriate level of threat for Moon Knight, I think. Pretty cool book. Check it out. All right, we're in uncharted territory for me. We have Power Rangers and TMNT, I think volume 2, issue number 1. And I'm loving this book. This book was great. I got that awesome Virgin variant Frizen cover on there. And somebody correct me. I mean, like my gut, I don't read a lot of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or Power Rangers. My gut is that's April, but she's got that bow. I'm like, is that Ranger Slayer? Like, I don't know what's going on, guys. I'm too ignorant. Let me know. Let me know what's happening down there. So what's really cool in this book, though, is we have Dan Mora on the art, which is incredible. And he just does such a great job with action scenes and with just different characters and things like that. I just love the way that he portrays characters, especially these kinds of characters who are a little bit exaggerated. And they're just fun to see in this big spread right here. So timeline-wise, Shredder's been missing right now. I think Rita maybe took him or something like that. Not exactly sure what's going on. Both teams are playing cleanup around the streets right now. Casey Jones is out there doing his own thing. And there's some like inevitable return of a big bad villain in here. And people are going missing. So our two teams here are investigating that. They stopped this prison break incident right here, and they learn the truth a little bit about who's been abducting these people over this time. And it's a pretty big deal, I would imagine, for the people who are into the history of TMNT and Power Rangers. So very impressed with this first issue. It makes me want to go back and read it. It makes me regret kind of not reading volume number 1. I'm going to keep running with this one, though, because it was a lot of fun so far, and it's really nostalgic, and it's just drawn really well, and the art's really cool. Storytelling is really awesome, too. TMNT Power Rangers number 1. I think it's a volume 2. Definitely worth it. We have another Tynan book. This is actually from Boone Studios. We have Book of Slaughter, issue number 1. Got that FOC reveal variant, which I think is great. In the vein of Something is Killing the Children, it's almost like a direct spin-off of House of Slaughter, if I'm not mistaken, where we had like Aaron and Jace or whatever that awful story was. And so basically we have some flashbacks to that inside of here as well. We have this main character on the front. She's actually was friends with Aaron, and she wants to change from being a white mask to a black mask. And there's all these just different traditions and things you have to go through to accomplish that. So it's kind of like her prep talk with some of the higher people to get to that point. We do explore a little bit about the House of Slaughter and the different houses in general. In this one section of the book here, it's about a third of the book, I would say, maybe even half, which goes over things like this is what this mask does, and that's what that mask does, and this is who these people are, and things like that. What I was really hoping for was more of a deep dive in the lore, the houses, the relationships, the traditions, things like that. What we got was a very high level, seems like it was written by, like a high schooler or something like that. Just give me like one paragraph synopsis of all these different houses and what apprenticeship looks like. The blind hunt, a couple paragraphs on that. It wasn't written from a perspective of being like historically significant. And what I mean by that is it feels like somebody wrote it today. Some like random blogger would write these kinds of things today. So there's no like depth, there's no emotion, there's no feel, there's no legacy, there's no history or weight to any of the explanations of this stuff. And that's what I was really, really hoping for when I was reading this book. So it's not a bad book. I liked the fact that he put some history and lore in the book as well, and they made it part of the story, so it wasn't just like a random information dump. There's a reason why it's in there, and you're kind of taking over the perspective of the main character when you're reading that section, so I liked that. But I just want it to be more impactful when you give us that kind of stuff. I want it to feel old. I want those pages to be burnt and stained. I want the font to be not like Arial type, right? It's just like, if this was an old ancient book, it would not read like this or look like this. That's what I was disappointed about. So I want this whole thing to feel more natural and interesting story though. I mean, the character's fun. It's going to be interesting to see her transition from a white to black mask, what that entails, and how it rolls into the main Something's Killing the Children universe. We have Eric out there still. We have this Cutter chick out there. They're about to throw it down pretty soon. Is she going to get involved somehow? I don't know. It's going to be fun to see. What do you guys think? All right, the next couple of books are going to be on digital read because we didn't get the physical copies in the shop yet, but we have AWA Upshots Sacrament. This is issue number 5. The conclusion of Peter Milligan's run on Sacrament. It's an interesting book. Again, it's kind of an exploration of how religion's handled in the far distant future. I think it's like 1,000 years in the future, something like that. And there's this weird exorcism that needs to be performed. This particular demon was haunting this priest in his youth, actually killed the person that was mentoring him at the time during that exorcism, and he's back now. But the problem is our priest has lost faith along the way, and he's let like sin into his life in all various ways, things like that. And now he's responsible for bringing up this young priest, this young girl, to kind of get her on the right path, and all hell kind of breaks loose from there. So it's a big exorcism in the future, crisis of faith kind of an issue. Interesting ending in here. I definitely did not see this ending coming. I think it was an appropriate ending, an appropriate path to take to get to the end here. And so I do applaud them for doing that. It's 5 issues. Art style is really interesting. It's kind of got a muddy, less detailed art style to it, which, you know, might be its only flaw, I think, but I think it did a good job of portraying the characters, the environments, things like that. So Sacrament is a pretty interesting run. It's only 5 issues. AWA putting out some really crazy stuff. Peter Milligan does a really good job with these kinds of things. So yeah, check out Sacrament if you haven't yet. The next digital book we read this week from Boom Studios was Once Upon a Time at the End of the World. This is issue number 2 from Jason Aaron. And I love the dynamic between these two people. Essentially, the world's gone to shit. We have this one female lead who's like a ranger, kind of like a weird evolution of like the Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, something like that. But she's been in the wild. She knows exactly how to survive out here, and she's kind of on the run. We learn who in this issue. She comes across this guy who's kind of lived in an ivory tower solo by himself with unlimited resources, has a whole different viewpoint on the world, but inevitably they team up. He goes off into the wild, kind of follows her out there, and it's their trials and tribulations out there in the wild, and they develop this kinship because of it. So it's a pretty cool book. It's chock full of humor and just weird, crazy situations he puts the characters in. Very well executed. I like the world that they're in. I like the antagonist and the protagonist they've introduced into this issue. I can't wait to see where this one goes. Once Upon a Time at the End of the World. I think it's just like a fun read. I like the dynamic between the characters. The environment's interesting, so I would highly recommend that one as well. And the last digital read from this week was from Image Comics. We have Lovesick issue number 3. This is from Vishayo. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I probably butchered that one, but Lovesick issue number 3 from Image Comics. Pretty cool book if you're into the Red Room situation, if you like trigger warnings or Ed Piscor's Red Room, if you're into more of that gory, sensual kind of a story, that's exactly what you have here. We have our dominatrix queen, Domino here. She's kind of sacrificing these different people to the cause in a Red Room situation, but she's kind of haunted with some past demons in this book, and she feels the threat of an imposing group that's going to be infiltrating them pretty soon and trying to get to her and kind of give her a taste of her own medicine. Some people out there who just don't like what she's doing, obviously, and she's exploring those thoughts, and we get a little taste of what that power looks like inside of this issue. So some guys are fighting back against this Red Room right here in Lovesick. It's a pretty interesting book. If you're into like that whole Red Room situation, I'd recommend this one. And Trigger Warnings, which ended earlier this year, one of the best reads of the year. Well, that's everything I read this week. I really appreciate you watching. Hit that like button. If it's your first time here, consider hitting that subscribe button as well. As a reminder, I put content here on YouTube and Instagram as well. Links will be down below in the description. But as always, I appreciate you watching. Let me know what your favorite books of the week were down in the comments. I will see you down there.